book that I resumed reading, I had just kind of cracked the cover on it a while back, and the author's name is James Stinson, and the book is called Father, the Family Protector. And again, I'm just at the front end of it, but it lends a lot to some things we can delve into. Just a little bit about him, the author. He's not a father actually, and he's a schoolmaster and helped to establish a couple of schools, one of which was the one I went to speak to some of the parents in D.C., this Opus Dei school, the Heights, very, very elite school and all, but he was one of the forming members of that school. And what he did in this book was to take an approach similar to, if we're familiar with Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. He surveyed through his own experience some successful, in his day and age, some successful people in the way of wealth, and what was the common thread amongst them. What are some of the common traits that they had? So what Mr. Stinson did here was he obviously as a schoolmaster dealt with a lot of families, saw those that were pretty much had their act together and doing a good job of parenting and those sorts of things. And so he was going to put down in this book some of those common practices and things that they did. So the layout of the book is taking these traits, and we're going to start off in leadership. And we've heard this before, that we have some practices within the workplace of leadership that tend to be pretty effective. And he goes right on into, just like we've done, and saying, well, if we take some of those practices and apply them in the home, because you can have men that are very effective in the workplace and not so at home. But if we take those and apply them at home, then some good things can happen, and we can be effective leaders and have well-formed children. And in this case, obviously, we know that the leadership does fall on the shoulders of the father. The dad's the head of the home. That's not a privilege, it's a duty. It's something we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take it as our duty, and that is God's design. We're not thrusting ourselves into that position, but God ordained it this way. And we only need to look to the Holy Family, right? Because if the holiest person in the household would be in charge, then the Christ child would have been in charge. Or out of the couple, it would have been our Blessed Mother, but it was Saint Joseph, who still a very holy man and just man, was the head of that family. And why might that be? Just because of human nature, the way God designed us. Relatively speaking, we tend to be less bent on emotion, and so we might not be so sympathetic with our children whenever they misbehave or disobey. Mom might tend to be, or she tends to be more lenient, and so we need to shoulder that responsibility, firm that up for their own good. And why are they made that way? Obviously, so they could be aware and sensitive to their needs, especially as babies, in case of possible illness or something not be quite right. So let's go ahead and see what these practices might be, and I'm gonna roll through them real quickly here, and then there's going to be a few that I'm going to want to dive into or drill down on, if you will. First of all, he says, and these are bullets, so they're not so much numbered, but he says the man puts his wife first, and the children know this. And he goes on to say in that one that this is more than half of the secret to effective fatherhood. Next, he has a spirit of lively collaboration with his wife. They present a united front to the children. Next, a great father works with his wife to maintain a long-term vision, 20 years ahead. The next one, he sees his sacrificial efforts as an investment into his children, not merely a vexing hassle, to receive a later reward, a payback for these sacrifices that he makes. He corrects his children's faults. He's never afraid of being temporarily unpopular. Again, we don't need to be buddies. We don't need to be friends. We just don't need any of that. And we need to see what we're doing in our relation to our children as what we need to do for them to build character into them. He's conscious of his authority. He knows what goes on in a home and inside the growing minds of his children. He teaches them how to use their freedom responsibly. So he's going to teach them that they have freedoms and rights, but how to use it responsibly. He wants his children to be active, doing things, active in life, have an active life that also involves intelligent risk taking. Not hiding, under a bushel basket, but being out there doing things, and even if some, prudent risk is involved. He goes without TV to set a good example. These are all things that this, we've talked about this, and it's good to have another outside party that's observed some things that are very peculiar that he's seeing. It's a bit of an affirmation to some of the things that we propose and recommend. He says a life of leisure. He's willing to put off a life of leisure until his children are grown. And then goes on from. Let me do a few more. He reads a lot. He knows a lot, and so this leads his kids to become readers. He's open to his children's suggestions as to about family decisions, getting their input, and he takes his wife's judgment seriously. And then there's a few others. So I want to flip back to the front, and because apparently that, as he said, this is half the battle, and kind of lend a little of my own discussion to it. So let's take the first bullet, and I'm gonna read it out completely as he puts it here. The man puts his wife first. In his priorities, her happiness and welfare are uppermost, and the children know this. They know it because he leads them by his own example to love, honor, and cooperate with their mother. If they ever fail to do this, they answer to him for it. And this is where he says this is more than half the secret of effective fatherhood. Striving to live as a devoted, protective, and supportive husband. And I've been at parenting 27 years, so I got to say that my own experience, that is very true. And the way I would put it in the past, I've said, as I was approaching marriage, I felt that my principal duty in marriage was to make my wife happy. Now, come to learn through experience and through other people that didn't necessarily mean giving her everything she wanted. And why might that be? Or that I even had that ability to give her everything she wanted. I mean, who can do that, right? But even Father Ripperger, who's the exorcist priest, he gave an example one time of that. He pretty much verbatim. He says, it's to make her happy. It's not to give her what she wants. And he gave this example of this couple. The wife wanted this form or something, a house on a farm out, and he says, he's pretty blunt with things. He says, that's dumb, you're gonna be miserable. And sure enough, they went through with it, and she was miserable. And so, I guess through divine grace and just through the grace of the sacrament, we should be in that position to know whenever we say, no, that's not a good idea. You might think you want that, or but it's not going to work. And and they end up happier in the long run. And why did I even think of that? I mean, 'cause I'm telling you I did. Because I grew up in a home where the mom wasn't happy. My mom wasn't happy. The wife and she just wasn't a happy person. And I just said to myself, well, I'm going to figure this thing out, but we're not going to have a household that way. My children are not going to grow up in that kind of household. And so I got to figure out, say, how is it that she will have true happiness, and how am I going to do that? So, and you learn from others, be teachable. You have to be humble and say, okay, well, I might not know this. How do I find out? And go to the people that are having success in that area and find out. And being this head of the home, this headship, it might sound like you're mean, or that you're imposing your will or your way on things, but in actuality, these women, especially when they're in childbearing years and things, they need that stability to lean on. They need to know that post is there, that's not going to move, and it's not going to budge, and that especially when you have sons and they're growing up. And so, again, learn it, find out, be desirous to know, teachable, and then you actually got to execute. You got to do it. You got to do whatever it is, the things that are said. Because I've talked to a lot of people. I know other people that that have mentored others, and you'll see somebody will come and they come and listen to you, give your spiel or whatever, and then they're still off doing it what they call their own way, and it's just not going to work. But here it says, if you remember back here, he said, if they fail to do so, then they answer to him for it. And I stand before you 5, 6, 150-ish. The ish is kind of on the plus side, falling around 154 these days, but competition weight 148, so. And I have 5 sons, and there's something about my family that I've been called stubborn and strong-willed, and unfortunately it's an inherited trait, and my sons have inherited that too. And understand it's not just a flaw, it comes in very handy. It really comes in handy, especially in the area of headship and leadership. It just has to be channeled in the right direction. It's actually a gift, it's a talent, and I appreciate possessing it. But if you have, my 3 adult sons are, approaching 6 foot or 6 foot plus. So obviously I had to, and I have their respect, obviously I had to form into them in their formative years the idea of respect and how they are going to deal in relation to their mother. Because I would tell them this: she's not my best friend, she's my girlfriend. And whenever you are dishonoring and being disrespectful to your mother, you mess with my girlfriend. And that's not a good place to be. Just think about it. If you had a girlfriend and you had somebody that was not being honorable to them. So you got to know that's what you're messing with. And we're going to go from there. And as he said further into his discussion, okay, we require that they work around the house. We keep them busy. And her duty, in my mind, especially as they've grown up, is to supervise. She's not my maid either. We have a lot of arms and legs and hands around the house that can take care of pretty much everything. So everybody has their duties. They know what they are. And she is to assign others that may come up and to supervise, make sure they get done to my satisfaction. Because there's ways that I want things around our home. He also mentions, as we get further into chapter 1, 2 types of families. One being a consumer type. And this type of family is one that their focus tends to be around leisure, entertainment, TV, movies, and shopping. Buying. So that, like, shopping is like a principal activity of some of these families. That's one type. The other type is a sports adventure type family, and they have a mission. They have something they're going to accomplish. They're very active. They do a lot of things, and they just have this desire to accomplish something, to do projects, and of course they're going to vary family to family depending on the gifts and talents God has given them. But he says that active family, those types tend to be much more successful because they build in the character and the work ethic that goes toward all that. So how do I get this done? With my sons and daughters. Okay. One of the principal practices, and I just developed this on my own, but it was through some ideas from a minister, a Protestant minister by the name of Michael Pearl. Many of y'all know him, and I've heard him. And I was noticing that we would have problems with obedience, and my wife would get a little discouraged. And I'll say, look, you have adults. If you go, like, let's say you go out to a job site, there's going to be probably one guy that's going to be there, and he's going to look like he's not doing anything. And he's probably going to be sitting in his truck on the phone. But his job there is to make sure the other guys do what they're supposed to do. So that's why he's not doing anything. So it's not that there's anything wrong with our kids, that they're not being obedient. It's just like, that's just human nature. So somebody's got to be there, supervising, and make sure things get done. So don't think there's anything wrong. It's just human nature, and we deal with it, and we each do our job as it has to be done. And then the other problem was with respect, because to me, if something is done or answered, but it's not done respectfully, then it might as well not have been done. So we also have to build in the respect. So I developed what was called art days, which could start as art hours or art weeks or art months, potentially an art year. No, we won't get to an art year, but these are days where, or weeks, where it's almost like drills, but it's procedure, because we're building in habits. And it's ORT, not ART, obedience and respect training. So it would go something like this. They all know their duties when they got to get up in the morning, and it depends on whether we're in school or not. We homeschool. And so they may go, after morning duties and then breakfast, then go into school. And if not go into school, they either after breakfast or after school, they report to mom to find out whatever they need to do besides, what they already know the duties to be. And then she tells them, okay, do this, do that. And it's not, Mom, do you want me to wash the van while it's 30 degrees outside? No, because that's what they tend to do. And it's like, don't ask Mom if she wants you to do thus and such, because that's just going to cause confusion. What you're doing is you prompt Mom, what do you need me to do? And that way, that allows her to, prompts her to observe what needs to be done and what each particular kid is capable of doing. So that's how that has to be asked. And then they go off and do the task. Now, they may end up in the backyard or in the back field, to where and that's part of the training, where they have to be reeled back in and we start all over again. But what's going to come to happen is they come back and say, okay, Mom, I've done the task. Do you want to check it? And then she could decide, she's supposed to check it, make sure it's done right. And if not, she may be in the middle of something else and can't do it at the time. Is there anything else you need me to do? And that on art days, that just goes on all day long till she gets tired of it. And then they have to, they're not, those are not play days, there's no free time and things like that. So that's kind of how that's been accomplished, and it works dandy. Works really well. So art days, use them. And then I want to just go into the second half of this, into the next point that he makes. It's not going to be a whole another half because I don't have that much time. But the next two bullets, and I'm going to read them through and just kind of comment. He has a spirit of lively collaboration with his wife. He sees her as his partner in collective team enterprise. Together they work as much as possible to present a united front to the children. They check with each other about decisions, large and small, that affect the children's welfare. They draw on each other's strengths, and in different but complementary ways, they support each other. Next bullet, very important. He says very important. This is his point. A great father works with his wife to maintain a long-term vision, 20 years ahead, about the children's growth and character, no matter what they later do for a living. Both spouses picture their children as grown-up men and women, adults with virtue, conscience, generosity, competence, responsibility, self-mastery. This distant but clear ideal forms the basis for teaching, practice, and correction now. See, so what we're doing now is going to echo into 20 years and into eternity, right? And some of us here are married already, and then some of us here may be anticipating or discerning, preparing for marriage. So again, we can both use this. It's something we need to know. And I'm going to reference my own book, Catholic Manhood Today. And just look at how the chapters are laid out. The second half of the book is about how to apply the masculine virtues and characteristics. Forming relationships, well, first becoming independent and then interdependent from the parents, growing up, okay, through adolescence into becoming an adult. Interdependent with others, then forming relationships, then eventually forming the intimate companionship of a permanent mate. And then within that relationship, leading and loving, then fathering, because you're going from just a husband into a father, and then finally guiding. And the guiding is what I want to plug here. So again, it's the field manual. It's a handbook to reference as needed for different areas. The guiding here, you see, we don't stop just because the kids are adults. We still need to be that guide. We need to be available. They need to come to us. And what I tell my kids is, especially as they get to be adults, form relationships, observe others, form some friendships, and see where these people are coming from. Because we all got different backgrounds. We might even be in the same religion, but come from different backgrounds, different family structures and all, and different personality types. What clicks with you, what meshes with you. And I've got into from time to time just going with them and raising questions about these friends or these people that they know, and again, just being available. But forming those friendships kind of in not a very close, but just casual relationships. And then as they start getting into relationships more seriously, realizing that knowing what you're looking for, because how are you going to accomplish this? What we're talking about here, with a person that you're what we might call unequally yoked with somebody that has can't fathom an idea of where you want to go with life in the long term. It can't be just somebody that's cute or good looking, or that you just like to be around, or that makes you laugh. We're talking about in the future, you could be having children with this person. And as dads, look, I'm telling you, older dads, with the older kids, we need to be feeding this into them and letting them know about what they need to be looking for. And a lot of times they're not even going to know what they want for their future. Hopefully we've given them an idea through our own families of what's the best things to do within family life. But they need to own it for themselves and go in that route. Y'all know my first son just got married last month, and it was a young lady. I mean, he had been through searching for somebody, and I was involved, and and whenever he came to me after he met this young lady that was online, and we started going through the discussion, a lot of green lights were saying proceed. Yeah, that's the kind of sounds like a possibility. But you need to go physically see this young lady and her family and her surroundings and her activities, and see if because just this online stuff, I don't put a whole lot of trust in that. People could talk a good show, and then you get in person with them, and it's nothing like what you anticipated. So he did that, and things proceed, obviously. Wonderful young lady, great family, looks like they're going to have a wonderful life together. But after they got married, oddly enough, they go on their honeymoon, and they live where she is, so that's 9 hours away. So we not going to get to see them much. So they decided to come swing by our place and stay with us for a week before going back to start their own home and family life. And we went to, they came to Mass with us that Sunday, came to Mass with us a few times during the week. But anyway, and then we took them to brunch at Flanagan's. Y'all know Flanagan's. And the coinky-dinky thing about that was that that's one of the places my wife and I went on our first date. And we actually sat at the table one table away from that table where she and I sat, and we had that discussion. I remember it vividly, over what our hopes and dreams and desires and aspirations and what we wanted to do with our life. And again, she and I, obviously, a lot of things clicked off. Now, 28 years down the road, it's about a 20-year vision. 20 years ago, I had no anticipation of where I'd be right now. None. Nothing like what was planned. As far as, I guess, the externals. I mean, my family life, yeah, pretty much straight, yeah. But my work life, the faith, the way I practice, she and I met in church. We really did meet in church. But the way we practiced the faith then and the way we practice it now is almost opposite. It's pretty much night and day. But again, we grew together. And I remember I had a boss. He was Protestant, but he had been married longer than me, obviously. And he said, people change, and you just need to change together, because people are going to change over time. And so what I'm talking about here is to be able to do this thing, and it says put wife first, but have a partnership where you're going to work together and execute a long-term vision. I mean, you really got to be, right there with each other, hip to hip. And what I want to focus and emphasize is communication and time. And the communication has got to be beyond. What tends to happen is we get buried in the details, right? The day-to-day life is so active, so much going on. That's why I prefer to homeschool. One of the many reasons is that you see kids out there, and it's like, I don't know how. It's a good thing they don't have a bunch of kids. How they keep track of everything they constantly going and on. There's no way. I just don't see how you can manage that. And so we're still pretty active, but we control that, how much we're going to do. And I can back down and rein in and say, we're doing too much, or we need to just stick to these things. These are the things that are really working for us and making it happen for us. These other things we just need to tone them down or let them go all together. But a lot of the motivators, I mean, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, the one I'm listening to right now almost exclusively is Jim Fannin. He talks, the way he puts it, he says, you got to go to higher ground. And he would have, he remembers as a little kid, he grew up in, what he calls in Appalachia, Kentucky, and he had, I think, an Indian background. His grandfather would take him out in the woods. And he'd say, Jimmy, if you ever get lost, go up to higher ground, because then you'll be able to see where it is that you're coming from and find your way home. And he says, you know, a lot of them recommend you do this weekly. Go to higher ground. And I'm going to say, as couples, you know, having some kind of away time or alone time to be able to just reassess, okay, where are we in executing our mission here? You know, and what are the issues? And, you know, beyond just day to day, you know, I know I need to bring Katie here on this day and Johnny here on that day. But how are these things happening for us in executing our mission and accomplishing what we want to accomplish for our family? You know, I guess I can. This is gonna be my final main point. It's getting long, but marriage is the major leagues. Don't mistake it. The highest level of the game. I mean, just stop and think, okay, you're into something that is imaging the Trinity, and you are procreating humanity with God. Pretty high stakes. Okay, so it's up there. So if you're in Little League, you're lucky to get a pitch over the plate. And it's going to be this big, and it's going to be straight. You know, easy to deal with. Major leagues, watch the curveball. The older dads here are going to know what I'm talking about. There's going to be stuff that's going to come that you never saw coming. And I could see why, if a couple is not solid, if they're not together, how it could devastate a relationship if you're not, you know, paired up and on the same page. There's stuff that just happens, you just, through no fault of anybody. Where did that come from? And just be ready for it. Just be ready, you know, be ready to be able to hit the curveball. You got to be able to do it. And that's where, again, staying in a state of grace, praying together, you know, all the things, we know all the things, the sacrament, you know, all the things that we have available to us to be able to do this thing we're talking about. So finally, just, you know, as a wrap, as he puts it, you know, we're here to raise adults. We're not here to raise kids. And the couple relationship, the husband and wife relationship, is going to be the key foundation upon which to do that. God bless you.